I feel like there's so many ways in which this country denies its history, right? It denies the history of genocide against indigenous people. It doesn't want to talk about slavery. It's constantly about the reboot. Let's start over. It's the fresh start country. But one of the things I think we talk about least is the war on the left in this country, and the fact that there's been a very, very dirty war waged on socialists in this country, black socialists, democratic socialists, the trade unionists. It's been bloody. It's been bloodiest for black workers, but it's been bloody for white workers too. And the suppression of that history worked for a really long time. But that's what I feel is lifting. Maybe I'm projecting, but I feel like I feel like something is happening where the deep roots of revolutionary movements in this country are reawakening.
It is Friday, February 7th, 2020. Welcome to Raging Chicken's Out the Coop podcast. Yes, that was Naomi Klein, everybody, on a recent episode of Michael Moore's Rumble podcast. Yes, indeed. But this is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken Press. Each week I talk to our Capitol muckraker-in-chief, Sean Kitchen, about the good, the bad, and the ugly in state and national politics. On this week's show, what the Iowa Democratic Party? Are you serious? After Iowa's Democratic caucus meltdown on Monday, we finally got the sorta final results. As of last night, with 100% reporting, Pete Buttigieg is 0.1% ahead of Bernie Sanders in the state delegate equivalent tally. That standard unit of measurement that we all use in our daily lives. However, Sanders won the most votes in the first round of voting and in the second realignment vote. It was only because of the electoral college-esque way that they allocate those delegates, where rural counties are weighted more than urban ones, that we see Buttigieg pull slightly ahead. But, of course, Tom Perez has got to be a recount. We'll see how that goes. Conspiracy theories are abounding. Elizabeth Warren also finished a strong third, coming in 18% of the vote. It was pretty good. But Uncle Joe, Uncle Joe came in fourth, followed by Amy Klobuchar. Tonight, Friday, everybody, I'm sure everybody will be watching this, is the New Hampshire Democratic debate. This time with only 7 candidates making the cut. Sanders, Warren, Biden, Buttigieg, Klobuchar, Yang, and yes, our favorite billionaire, Tom Steyer. No Bloomberg yet. On Tuesday, Trump gave a carnivalesque State of the Union address, and Nancy Pelosi tore that shit up. Literally. She tore it up. And as I wrote in the pages of Raging Chicken Press this week, Trump's State of the Union address should put all Democrats on notice that he is making a strong play for re-election. And I think the Democratic establishment is taking his bait, which may prove fatal for our electoral hopes. And Senate Republicans, of course, as we expected, ignored the evidence and acquitted Trump of his impeachment charges. Of course, we knew that was coming. Now he is free to really set fire to the nation. And Mitt Romney, I gotta say, all credit where credit is due, gave a pretty freaking great speech and became the only senator in history to vote to convict a president of his own party on impeachment charges. Now, as much credit I'll give him, the whole media gushing over Romney the statesman and why can't Romney run for president is a little sickening. Have we not forgot, or have we not remembered, have we forgotten? How do we put that? So quickly. Anyways, there's that. In segment 2 today, Donald Trump took time out of his State of the Union address to attack Governor Tom Wolf over Wolf's vetoing an unprecedented EITC charter school grift last summer. And you'd never guess where his talking points came from. You got it, straight from the Commonwealth Foundation themselves. Government schools got government schools. But this was budget week here in Pennsylvania, and Governor Tom Wolf's budget was pretty interesting. All right, it is a proposed $36 billion budget, no major tax increases, a boost of funding for public education, expanding full-day kindergarten to all students. It's going to borrow money to address environmental hazards in schools and make sweeping changes to how charter schools are funded. There's also some serious money in there for some scholarships for low and moderate income students to the Pennsylvania State System of Higher Education. So quite interesting, and we'll get into that. In today's last call, NASA astronaut Christina Koch returned to Earth yesterday, setting a new record for the longest single space flight by a woman. She spent 328 days on the International Space Station and did a ton of scientific work. Very, very cool stuff. Great link in the show notes that will take you to some of the pictures of the work that she did. SpaceX is on a job hiring spree along with Tesla. Yes, that's right. Yesterday, Starship, there was a Starship career day for SpaceX. They say they're going to start ramping up production of its interplanetary Starship project and speed the race to Mars. They're looking to go out, to see that full launch, test launch, go out by September. According to Musk, right, they're looking for enough staffing to make 4 production shifts that will run 24/7 to get those ships up and running. We shall see. And also at the Tesla end of Elon Musk's multi-billion-dollar empire, he basically has been tweeting out, look, we're hiring over at Tesla. We need more employees. We don't even care if you have a high school diploma. And while the Space Force did make it into Trump's State of the Union address, Space Force planners are still struggling with what to call the new troops. They've consulted with the Air Force Academy Language Department and the Defense Language Institute about all sorts of possible designations. According to Lieutenant General David Thompson, who's assigned as the vice commander of the Space Force, they're taking it very seriously, but they have definitely ruled out spacemen or space cadets, which is good. And everything that I just said is actually happening, which is wild. Got a couple new Free Will Brewing releases this week. We've got a collab with Lost Tavern Brewing with a little cream ale called Slowmore that, by the way, has one of the best labels out there. It's got a guy, it's a cartoon character, but sitting on a tractor mower, mowing through snow, all with kind of winter gear on and stuff. It's totally cool, totally fun. That's a cream ale, comes in at 5.2 ABV, so nice, easy drinking beer. And also this week, there's a debut of Eon Blue, which is a new barley wine. Which looks spectacular. That comes in at 9% ABV with notes of vanilla, graham cracker, and nutty toffee. Want to remind everybody to tune in to The Rick Smith Show on Free Speech TV this and every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern. You can stream the show live at freespeech.org. You can also tune in to the Dish Network, DirecTV, or through the Free Speech TV app on Roku. And make sure that you download The Rick Smith Show's daily podcast on iTunes, Podbean, or wherever you get your podcasts. By the way, a little update. Rick is doing really well after his surgery. He had his bionic hip put in, as he puts it. We're wishing him well here, Raging Chicken. I guess his physical therapy is going well, and he looks like he's going to be up in no time. But man, that's a big one. So you'll be hearing for Rick live show return pretty soon. But in the meantime, make sure you reach out to him, wish him well, and for a speedy recovery. And if we want a progressive future, everybody, we need progressive media. You can help support Pull No Punch's homegrown progressive media today. Become a member of Raging Chicken Press for as little as $5 a month. Simply go to patreon.com/rcpress and choose your membership level. We're expanding our network as we prepare for the fight of our lives and the fight for the future in 2020. We're all in for the fight, and now we need you. We're not asking you to break the bank here. We're asking you to become a member for the price of a good beer once a month. Help keep the media in the movement and the movement in the media. Become a member for as little as $5 a month by going to patreon.com/rcpress today. Well, everybody, I've got a bit of some bad news or confession to make here. Is that Sean will be here for our second and third segment today. He actually was here for our first segment today. But something happened with the recorder. I'm sure I mishit a button or something like this. So we didn't get the audio. We figured, I figured, actually, there's no we in this. This is all on me. That about kind of 40 minutes into it, that it was not recording. So that was great. That was doubled with the fact that usually we always have a backup going, but there's some weird, quirky thing happening with Zoom. We record our podcast with Zoom. And it was not launching, so I had to kind of uninstall, reinstall the program and stuff, and that would not let me record, so we didn't have a backup. So it was a double whammy. That's on me, so we're probably going to blow through this a little bit quicker than we would normally when Sean and I were kind of really got into this. One, I'm a little tired now, a little frustrated with myself, but so on. But so let's just kind of run through some of the key things here, and give you a little analysis that I think we should be paying attention to. So, I mean, what happened in Iowa is just absolutely inexcusable, but it reveals a whole bunch of things, right? So on the one hand, at the center of this was that app, right? There's a new app that they were using for the first time for these caucuses, and as reporting has been coming out, it's been clear that there were some kind of tech engineers or tech folks that were associated with the party that were warning everybody that this was not what they should be doing, that they should not be doing this. There were some problems with the app, but those were ignored. And, of course, we also find out that, of course, this was like an app that was developed through a no-bid contract, right, for about $60,000. That was supposed to also be used in Nevada coming up. But Nevada was like, oh, no, we are not touching that thing now, right? And it was supposed to make things easier, right? So the one layer is that. And it turns out that these are folks that have been kind of have long associations with the kind of Democratic centrists. They were plugged in through, say, the Clinton campaign. It's that kind of wing of the party. And these are the kind of consultant class people that were just like, hey, you're our buddy. Hey, will you go up and develop this app? And they developed this app, and now it crashed. And now they're facing all sorts of questions. And I'm sure that people are going to wondering, well, are they going to return that money? My guess is no. So that's kind of one component of it. But there's another aspect of it which has caused even that much more controversy, to the point where, we're like, 4 days ahead of the New Hampshire primary, and this is still cycling through the through the news cycle. And this is what we're talking about, right? Because it was such a debacle, and it's been renewed once again because, Bernie Sanders has now come out and basically says, okay, yes, we were victorious because we received 6,000 more votes than any other candidate, right? But of course, the way that the Iowa Democratic Party figures out who's the quote-unquote winner is by these things called state delegate equivalents, which basically says every caucus and weights it based upon where it is. And as you could guess, just like with the Electoral College, it weights rural counties more than urban counties, right? So that's already built into this, right? So the whole kind of western part of the state is given more clout than the eastern part of the state, in particular in the city areas. Right, so that's the only reason why Buttigieg kind of has come out with, he's ahead of Bernie Sanders by 0.1% in the state delegate equivalents, right? But he's still, if you look at those three kind of sets of data that were reported this year, there was the first vote. That's when people come in and they declare, I'm here caucusing for this candidate. You had Bernie Sanders that came in at 43,671 people, and that was 24.8%. And Pete Buttigieg was 37,557, about 21.3%, right? It's down. Now, as the caucus system works, if somebody doesn't get above 15%, right? Well, what happens? You got it. They become, they're not viable, and then they are free to join another campaign. Right? Join another campaign and caucus with them. And so that's what happened, and they call that the realignment, right? That was that second round vote. And the second round vote, Sanders was still on top, right, with 45,826 votes to Pete Buttigieg's 43,195 votes. So again, it's 2,000 votes, a little more than 2,000 votes, but he definitely closed some of that gap. Bernie Sanders had 26.6%, and Pete Buttigieg had 25%. So Sanders is kind of has a gap of 1.6% ahead of Buttigieg, right? So those are the kind of the actual numbers, the popular vote numbers, if you will, right? It's only then we see the state delegate equivalents, we get 562 for Sanders and 564 for Pete Buttigieg, right? Primarily because of the delegates that were awarded in those rural counties. Okay, so here we are. Now it comes out of it. Now, Nomiki Konst basically has been talking about this quite a bit. Is that one of the things that the Sanders campaign pushed hard for after the 2016 election was for there to be a transparent reporting of these three different categories. Because before, what would happen, the Iowa Democratic Party would only report those state delegate equivalents at the end and said this is who won. The Sanders campaign complained back then, right, that wait a minute, we've got more votes, right? So but we don't end up with fewer delegates. So next time around, right, everybody should see this. There should be a transparent process so everybody can see this. So just like in 2016, right, as we know, is that Hillary Clinton won the popular vote in this country by 3 million votes, and yet Donald Trump won the presidency because of our outdated, backwards-ass electoral college system, right? That holds true also now in this Iowa caucus, right? That the popular vote was won by Bernie Sanders, right? Whereas Pete Buttigieg squeaked away, we should say, with more of the state delegate equivalents, right? Now, be it as may, that is what it is, right, of where it is. So at the best case, we can say, okay, we've got a split decision here. State delegate equivalent goes to Pete Buttigieg, and we've got the popular vote goes to Bernie Sanders. Right, so however you want to kind of break that up, you break it up that way, right? So there you have it. Well, let's wind back now again. So that happens, right? And all this, and now again, we got to freaking talk about this stuff. But now you've got DNC Chair Tom Perez says that look, we have to go and recanvass all these votes all over again, which now in the Twitter sphere has exploded into all sorts of rounds of controversy and everything like this. And look, in the end, the difference between these two things is basically negligible, right? I mean, we're talking about a total of 41 kind of delegates that are coming out of Iowa, right? And they're going to walk away. Sanders and Buttigieg are basically going to walk away with essentially the same thing. But as multiple people have made the case, Steve Kornacki's been making this case right along, is that Iowa is less important when it comes to the actual delegates as it is for the narrative, right? As it is for the claims about the viability of a campaign. Right, so that's why we're seeing so much of this stuff play out. But unfortunately, we have to play it out through these arcane process questions, as opposed to looking at what each of these campaigns did. Because look, you got to give all this credit to the Buttigieg campaign in the sense that talk about outperforming. That was he definitely outperformed. That was a surprise, and I think his campaign has every right to be extraordinarily excited about the performance here. Right, I mean, so this is not like Bernie versus Buttigieg thing in my head, at least, right? But Sanders makes a similar claim, right? If anything, that there's a concern of this. I think for the kind of on the Sanders end of thing is I think that the energy that was in the Sanders campaign in Iowa, there was I think a heightened expectation that he was going to do even better than that, right? But we shall see how it plays itself out. Now, as we move into New Hampshire, my guess is going to be that Buttigieg is going to get a little bit of a bump from that, right? And you can't say that it's undeserved, right? I mean, certainly the campaign worked. We start looking down the road, it's like his prospects become increasingly problematic unless something dramatic shifts. The other big story coming out of it is Biden came in fourth, right? And there was a time in the results where it looked like that Klobuchar was even going to kind of edge out Biden, and Biden might show up in fifth. And Sam Ceder's been making this argument for the past about week and a half or so, is that a fourth place finish for Biden is horrible. And we've already started seeing some reporting coming out that's saying, some of the donors are saying, "Oh, wait a minute, I think I bet on the wrong horse here." The question is who's going to be the right horse for the Democratic Party or the Democratic donor class, and that's I think has not been determined yet. Lots of speculation is that now you're looking for Bloomberg as the white horse that could come in and save the corporate Democrats from the scary leftists right in the party. I do have to say one of the things that's been troubling me ever since the night of the caucuses is that I think there's, because of this controversy at the top level, people are missing a story about Elizabeth Warren. Is that Elizabeth Warren came in with 18% of the vote, right? Which is, again, it's third place. But in terms of the percentage of the vote, so you have 18% there, kind of tending progressive, right? And 20, what did I say it was? 24%, 26%, 26%, right? So you're approaching kind of majority, right, between Sanders and Warren. So we'll see how that plays out. And I personally, this is where I come down on this, and I know there's going to be people that will just piss you off, but whatever. Is that, for me, that's the ticket, right? Sanders and Warren. And that's how you kind of like you build that block, that progressive block of there, and kind of sorting that stuff out. So I can only hope that there's some conversations that are happening with Bernie and Warren about what are some of the possibilities of kind of going forward as a joint ticket. Again, that could be completely wishful thinking, especially after all the dust-ups in the campaign and that kind of frustration. And I know that some of the Warren people and some of the Sanders people are kind of going to their corners against each other. I've said from the beginning, I think that's a huge mistake, which is why I have both their stickers on my car. Anyways. So that's that. So we shall see what happens in tonight's debate. We shall see if that's going to have any impact. But Tuesday, once again on Tuesday, is the New Hampshire primary, and that's going to give us, I think, even a clearer picture. And it's got to be said. I mean, if Joe Biden performs as badly in New Hampshire as he did in Iowa, it's going to be really hard to see how his campaign stays afloat. I mean, my guess would be he would stay in it until South Carolina, unless he starts getting some really bad poll numbers out of South Carolina, where it would just be a complete embarrassment for him. So we shall see. On Tuesday, Trump gave this, like, I mean, you got to call it carnivalesque, right? I mean, it's carnivalesque, kind of like, I don't know, carnivalesque, like combination of like Oprah and The Price is Right mixed in with some neo-fascism. I don't know what else to call it. It was to say the fact that Rush Limbaugh was given the Presidential Medal of Freedom. I mean, whatever. Although on that point, one more thing on that point, I believe it was Ryan Grimm who said this. Maybe it was I think it was Ryan Grimm who said, people are saying, I can't believe this happened, but if you, or no, actually, this is Rick Smith was saying this. Rick Smith was saying this when he said that, for people that surprise them, they don't really have that sense of two things. Number one, how fundamental Rush Limbaugh has been to shifting the entire political landscape in this country, right? So, again, from my perspective, he's a horrible, despicable person and politically just like disgusting. However, from the right perspective, this guy is, this guy is bigger than Reagan in many ways in terms of the impact and the shift of what's happening in this country. So that's number one. Then the other point that Rick was making was that it also shows you that, look, this should be the giant sirens and flashing lights saying that, look, he's getting that because also the right wing in this country invested in him. They understood the importance of investing in their media, right? And that is something that progressives have not got that message in any kind of systematic way. So now there's going to be some. I know that there will be some really interesting projects going forward, but we shall see if the progressive left actually kind of figures this out, that it's got to sink money into developing its infrastructure, right? And sink money into its infrastructure, not with like 75 strings attached, which basically, try to keep that independent media on a short leash, but you let it run, right? And kind of define the scope of the debate. But we can have that further debate another time. The big thing about the State of the Union is that one of the, of course, you got to put this, you got to give it, again, we've had our problems with Nancy Pelosi when we're talking about her on this show. But man, when she ripped up his speech at the end, that was the freaking best thing I could ever do, especially because it led off. Because, look, you got to give her credit. At the beginning of this, there's no love lost there. But when he gave her his copy of the speech, she reached out to shake his hand and he just turned away. Right. Which, of course, nobody's talking about that. Right. but he just turned away. But at the end of that speech, right when the cameras right behind him, right where all the cameras were in, she just tore up his speech and took her time doing it, right? That was a little bit of catharsis, I have to say. But I took to the pages of Raging Chicken this week, and as you, I hope you've been noticing, is that I'm publishing more frequently over there. We're going to get some more stuff up there too as well, and I think we need to at least participate in the development of our kind of discussion around this. But there was an aspect of the State of the Union address that was a anti-socialist Bernie Sanders scare thing, right? And we're not going to let socialists take over our medical care. The rhetoric. You know how it goes, right? And after the speech, for example, and I talk about this in the article, you basically had commentators on like CNN and NBC and all this kind of stuff. Chris Matthews, who's often another freaking Cold War fantasy, basically sounding the alarm that we have to do everything. They have to do everything, not we. They have to do everything to stop Sanders. Otherwise, it's going to destroy the possibilities of winning the election against Trump. Right. The case I make in that article is this: is that frankly, I think that was bait. I think that is the Trump campaign's bait for the centrist Democratic Party. Right. Not everyone, but these cable news commentators and a lot of these columnists that were that emerged in the New York Times and New Yorker and elsewhere, following the State of the Union address, were saying that warning about Bernie Sanders. The fact is that this is, in my mind, the Trump campaign was showing us exactly the campaign he's going to run, and basically it's going to be a ramped up version of what we saw in 2016. Right. Remember, in 2016, Trump did not have an organization or money behind him other than his own. Right. It was all lots of free media, and it was him doing his shtick. This time, you've got a kind of an organized, moneyed base, and there's tons of money flowing into the Trump campaign. And so prong one of the strategy is that you run hard right with the racist crap, with the neo-fascist stuff, with the misogyny, with the anti-immigrant rhetoric, with the xenophobia, all that garbage, right? The bomb everybody, right? All that kind of stuff. Everything you would expect coming from Trump, they're going to double down and go hard on that. And if you look at some of the rallies he's been having, and you look at what he said in that speech, that's there. Okay? But the other thing that Trump did in 2016 is he also ran to the left of Hillary Clinton rhetorically, right? Rhetorically, ran to the left of Hillary Clinton when it came to trade deals and when it came to manufacturing and investing in workers, right? So, and this has been the problem that Democrats have. If you've been, say, a core Democratic constituent, if you're kind of a labor activist or kind of a union member or African American or kind of working class woman, right? If you are the kind of like core of the Democratic Party. You're the ones that the Democratic Party has frankly taken for granted for about 30 years, right? And that has been that shift to the right. It's famously, said, I was looking for the exact quote that I could pull up and read to you today, but I just ran out of time. But back when the Democratic Leadership Council was being established back in the kind of 90s, right? That was Bill Clinton's big move to the center, right? The third way people. Part of the argument they were making internally in the party is like, look, we're going to go out, we're going to beat up on labor, we're going to beat up on African Americans, we're going to kind of shake our fingers at them, right, publicly, because they've got no place else to go. Right. And so what we're going to do, this is what the DLC, the centrist Democrats, the corporate Democrats decided, is that we're going to go after, the suburban kind of voter. We're going to go after moderate Republicans. Right. We're going to tack to the center. And so what we've seen over 30 years is this gradual march, like more conservatively, right, chasing the Republicans to the right, basically. And so if you're involved with activist politics, you're involved with kind of like rank and file kind of labor stuff, that there's a lot of people out there that begrudgingly go out and campaign for the Democrats because they understand what power means, but feel at a very visceral level that they've been betrayed by the party. Right, but they know that there is no other option. That third party stuff is might as well throw the election to the conservatives, and that's what's kept people in check for a while. But what Trump did brilliantly, I would say, is that he saw that, hey, look, there's a huge gap, right, on that left-hand side, right? That people are pretty pissed off on. Matter of fact, a lot of people pissed off in Pennsylvania about NAFTA, pissed off in Wisconsin about NAFTA, pissed off in Michigan about NAFTA, in Ohio and Indiana, right? That in that kind of upper Midwest, the central Midwest, and the kind of Rust Belt, who've been kind of like basically been shafted by this pro-free trade, these policies of people like Bill Clinton, of people like Barack Obama. Right. There was a great piece that I talk about in my article, right, where there was a reporting in the New York Times about 2 weeks after the election, where they were going in, they were finding out that the African American turnout for the first time in 20 years went south. Right. In other words, it declined. Right. And there was a lot of people that, now, again, we have to say there were policies about voter suppression that were quite active, right, in these areas. But what the New York Times reporting came out and showed was that a lot of these people didn't come out because they didn't see like it mattered. Like I said, what's the difference, right? That they didn't turn out because they didn't feel they were coming out for anything, because the Democrats had shafted them before. They put all their hope in Obama, and Obama turned out to be, nope, just more of the same. And so they said, what's the point, right? Now, you can get all moralistic if you want, right, and say those people should have, right? Just like people do with the Bernie bros, that they're the ones who caused all this stuff. And we get all moralistic about the people, the young folks who got involved with the Bernie Sanders campaign and then didn't end up to turn out the vote. And we could all blame them if we wanted to as well. But the reality is that stuff is real, right? We encourage people to vote to see themselves and vote their conscience and vote who they like and all this other kind of stuff. But then when they find there's nothing on offer that even matters to them or speaks to their lives, that somehow that they're going to be, then we're going to give them the whip at that point. That's just wrong. But so Trump saw that opening and tacked hard on that, right? The anti-NAFTA rhetoric, he went into we need to invest in manufacturing, we need to bring businesses back to America. That's the stuff that a big section of these of these states were feeling at a pretty visceral level. So now, of course, he has no commitment to any of that stuff, right? I mean, there's no material commitment, but we should know by now that people rarely vote on policy. I can tell you the number of conversations that I've had with people who are, liberal, right, who would never even think of voting for someone like Donald Trump, right? But what I keep on hearing again and again is this refrain about but there's no good candidates. There's no good candidates. And when you drill down, you ask them a little bit about that and say they just don't like the candidates. And then you ask them about the policies, right? And then you can have a kind of a discussion. You start thinking about things in a little bit different ways. But most people who vote in this country do not vote on basically a policy platform, right? And so that's the struggle. They look for those things that connect with them viscerally, right? And anybody who does kind of political campaigning knows this. And so that's what Trump did, right? And again, there's a lot of other things that happened. So I'm not saying this is the only thing that happened. I want to be clear. But that was a strong tactic. And then he basically set up exactly that dynamic in that speech, right? So as I was writing this, right, as I was writing that piece and getting ready to publish it too as well, there's a piece that came out in Politico too that basically saw this same tendency, right? And the flags were flying up, right? We have slightly different conclusions on it, but same thing, kind of tracks. Here's the discourse that was clearly directed to the right, but look at all this stuff over here that's speaking, right, rhetorically again, to those folks who are traditional Democratic voters on the right. Now, on the left, I'm sorry. My contention, where I differ with the article from Politico, is that the point is not, right, Trump's campaign is not trying to kind of peel off Democratic voters that will vote for him, right? The whole idea is that you want to lock in that 35 to 40% of his base that has stayed with him and has not moved a bit, right, since his election. You lock them in with all the red meat that you can possibly dump in their direction, right? And you say enough of the things that that the side to the left, right, is going to look and say like, hey, Trump is talking about this kind of stuff, and the Democrat, the centrist Democrat, is the one who's in support of these trade deals. And then they start wobbling on stuff. Those centrists start wobbling back and forth. We saw this already, the damage that's already happened to Elizabeth Warren's campaign after she started waffling on Medicare for All, right? People started feeling disaffected or like, oh, man, I can't trust it. Or look, we're just going to get let down. And as much as I would hate the fact that that should not be the case and should not be the way that people vote, that is nonetheless true. That is a dynamic that has to be paid attention to. And we should take it seriously. When people are like oh, my hope is up, and then it's been dashed, the result of that is a suppressed vote. Right? Republicans have understood this for a long time. Right? They know they are the minority party. Like, the vast majority of Americans do not agree with them. So if you have fewer people that are on board with what your policies are and what you care about as a party, what you have to do is you have to suppress the vote and keep the vote down through a combination of voter suppression policies on the one hand, but also stoking of the cynicism flames. Right? And I think that's what we got to be serious about that, because what I saw happen after that speech is that those centrist Democrats, those corporate Democrats, the consulted class of the Democratic Party took the red bait that Trump was getting out there about the socialist that's coming and wanted to shift everything over and was scrambling to find somebody that could somehow take down Bernie Sanders so that they can get back to the centrist position that they had to. And I'll tell you right now, I will go on record as saying this now. If that happens and they do something that is so despicable, they drive Bernie Sanders out of the race, and we go with someone who's this bland centrist corporate Democrat, Trump will win. Right? Now, I'm not saying that I guarantee that Bernie Sanders will win. I think no matter what happens, it is going to be a fight. But I'm pretty sure that there are better fighting chances when you have people that think that they're fighting for something rather than trying to vote and try to fight for, not Trump. Right? I'm certainly going to vote not Trump regardless. Right? If I have to vote for freaking Joe Biden, I will vote for Joe Biden against Donald Trump. I'll be clear about that, right? But that is not an expression of my personal like of the guy. It has to do with power and politics, right? That's it, right? But there's going to be other people that won't make that choice, and they will stay home. So that's what the little piece is about. You can get into some more of the details, so please do check it out in the pages of Raging Chicken. The other things that happened this week, of course, as we expected, the Senate Republicans voted to ignore all the evidence and acquit Donald Trump of impeachment charges. Now he's free to burn down the nation, I guess. That's where we're at. But the one thing that, I mentioned this in the intro today too as well, is that Mitt Romney's speech on the floor of the Senate was, pretty awesome, right? It was a moment to remember, and I think that will go down as kind of one of these really important moments in terms of American kind of rhetoric and public discourse. But we have to be clear, once again, that because he gave a really good speech, right, does not mean that Mitt Romney is indeed the knight in shining armor. We got to remember that Mitt Romney is the guy who made all of his money, right, by buying up companies, breaking them up, forcing them into bankruptcy, pocketing all the profits, and forcing all these people out of work. Right? That's how he got his money. He was a vulture capitalist. Right? He's also the guy, when he ran for president, who was basically saying 47% of the American public doesn't matter because they just want handouts from the government. Right? We remember that. We got to remember these things about Romney. Right? We can walk and chew gum at the same time here. We can give that guy all the kudos in the world for the speech that he made on the floor, because I have to say that felt right to me and good to hear. But at the same time, that doesn't mean we have to take the next step and then kind of rewrite and scrub his history and turn him into some shining white knight, when that is not what he's been for the American public. So, said that. Anyways, I'm going to kind of close it out here, and kind of so we can get it back in the segment 2. We're going to bring Sean back in. Again, I'm sorry that you don't get to hear some of Sean's commentary. We had a really good discussion about some of this stuff in the original version that was not recorded. So I apologize again for everybody. But in the meantime, I want to remind everybody that you become a member of Raging Chicken Press for as little as $5 a month. You can go to patreon.com/RC Press today. We'll be back right after this break, and I'll leave you with, once again, the tune from friend of the show, Ben. It's no quid pro quo. We'll be back right after this.
Just gonna see you do the right thing. Just gonna see you do the right thing.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2008. That evening at 7:15 p.m., an explosion rocked the city of Wentworth just outside Savannah, Georgia. An explosion had gone off at Imperial Sugar. Highly combustible sugar dust had ignited. 8 people died at the scene, while later, 6 more workers succumbed to their injuries at a regional burn center. The explosion left dozens more injured. The sugar refinery and packaging plant had operated since 1970. It was one of the largest refineries in the United States. The company had been warned for decades about the dangers of sugar dust. Yet the dust collection system was undersized and in disrepair. The building materials at the plant were outdated and added fuel to the fire. Worse, as many as 40 workers were not trained on how to evacuate in an emergency. Once the fire started, it burned quickly. The inferno reached temperatures of 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The Chemical Safety Board investigated the accident. Their conclusion was that it was entirely preventable and the deaths and injuries should not have happened. OSHA introduced a bill to regulate the dangers of combustible dust. But the Combustible Dust Explosion and Fire Prevention Act of 2008 did not make it through Congress. The company settled a series of civil lawsuits and paid a $6 million fine for the safety violations at Wentworth and another one of its plants. But they admitted no wrongdoing in the disaster. By November 2009, Imperial had rebuilt at the site. The disaster at Imperial was not an isolated incident. In the 3 decades leading up to that accident, 300 dust explosions killed more than 120 workers at sugar plants, food processing plants, and grain silos across the nation.
Welcome back to Raging Chickens Out the Coop podcast. And yes, believe it or not, Sean is here now after my technological debacle, right, from our first segment. I'm really sorry about that again. So you've heard all my apologies already, but I'm going to do it again. I'm very sorry for that. But Sean, at least I caught it before we got into the stuff on Pennsylvania, because I know that there's kind of a lot going on here in the state too as well. It's not just what's happening on a national level.
Yeah. So as we were talking about.
Yeah. So it's not as if we didn't have a long, really in-depth conversation. We did. It just, you don't get to hear it because I f***ed up.
I guess let's before we talk about the budget, I want to talk about, let's move into what happened with Governor Wolf, with Trump calling out Governor Wolf.
Sure. In
the middle of the State of the Union address over Wolf vetoing that EITC bill. Okay, so as we were saying beforehand, the rhetoric that Trump was putting out in his State of the Union address is very dangerous in relations to the safety and security of public education in this country.
Right. So in particular, you're talking about, so you guys didn't get to hear this, but the particular what you were drawing attention to, the fact they keep on using the term government schools. Right. Yes.
The term government schools. This is to evoke raw emotional heartstrings against public education in this country. It sounds, they're trying to make it sound just as bad as government cheese.
Right.
That's pretty much what they are doing to denigrate the public education institution in this country. And and Trump showed you who they want to give the money to. They want to give the money to the religious institutions that are getting these scholarships, and they want to give it to the charter schools. Governor Wolf vetoed the EITC tax credit last year. It was unprecedented, grift expansion of the voucher system in the state, and governor vetoed it. There's organizations out there like the Commonwealth Foundation, this, and this is where Trump's rhetoric came from. Was from probably Turzai and the Commonwealth Foundation. It's no stranger that there's no surprise that they had a family from Philadelphia there.
Yep.
So you kind of tying everything together and where these people come from. Yeah, these were Commonwealth talking points. They were able to land that into the State of the Union address to go after public education in an extremely dangerous way.
Yep.
And they want to make this an issue in 2020.
Oh, they're going to, and I don't even know if you saw that. Well, I know you didn't watch the whole State of the Union, but that section where you have that family, the mother and the daughter from Philadelphia, they're first introduced and like that, they're smiling and all that stuff, and as Trump goes in and starts attacking Governor Wolf and stuff, and the camera is on them. Maybe it's just me, but the mother in particular looked extraordinarily uncomfortable. Right, which kind of led me to believe that she didn't know everything that was coming. But I could be totally wrong about that, and it could be complete projection. But it was noticeable to see a shift from like, oh, we're so happy to be here and our daughter and this kind of stuff, to like, wait a minute, what's happening now?
And just destroy and attack public education in such a crude way.
Yep.
I mean, like that shows you what Trump wants to do. Like he wants to that speech shows that destroying public education is top priority. The next day, Pence was in West Philly. Mike Terzai was there, and again, Pence called, and DeVos was there as well. They called public schools government schools.
Yep.
Failing government schools. This is the poll tested platform they come up with, and if we don't have a left-wing rhetoric, left-wing candidate pushing these issues, we're going to get steamrolled.
Absolutely. Right, because everything is, if you think about what
he is making EITC and charter schools a 2020 issue in this state.
Yep. Well, look at it. You got Democrats. You've got Democrats out there who have been as much a part of the problem when it comes to charter schools as the Republicans have. Right. And so this is the kind of thing where, again, the kind of stuff I was talking about in the first segment is like, you box in the Democrats, right? And then you basically convince voters that, look, it's not worth it. These people are just doing the same thing.
And then also things that we're talking about, the EITC expansion bill. These foundations profit off of the money that goes into them, and they get tax breaks in return. They get to skim 20% off the top, and they get 90% of the money they give in tax returns, or 80% of the money back that they give in tax credits. So the rich get the profit off of these EITC thing. It's a grift. Everyone has their hand in the pot. And these bills that Terzai was pushing over the past year, the one that got vetoed, only like 5 Democrats voted for it, which is a lot less significant than there's a lot. It was so bad that like a lot of charter school supporters in the Democratic caucus didn't vote for it.
Yeah.
Then there's another one. There's another bill, House Bill 1800, that's going to try to charterize all third-class city schools, third-class school districts in the state. So Chester, Upland, Allentown, Reading, they're trying to give $8,000 per student out. House Bill 1800 is so bad it cannot pass on the floor right now. Terzai is between 5 and 10 votes shy of it passing. So these bills are so outrageous that not even Republicans are jumping on board.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, it's like, what you see by having Betsy DeVos down here, but Mike Pence like in town doing this and talking about.
And I also think that was equally as much as a shot at Republicans for voting against
to get in line
as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, here's the important thing about what Sean's pointing out there in terms of government schools, right? Because if you listen to Betsy DeVos has, she's done this in testimony, right? And she's kind of written about this and talked about this for years. Is she'll say she is not opposed to publicly funded schools, right? So in other words, taking taxpayer money, right, to pay for schools. What she's opposed to, right, is what she's calling government schools. In other words, our traditional public school systems, right? She wants to be able to take public money, right, and shift that to parochial schools to religious schools to like all sorts of quote unquote
to schools that don't want to teach evolution,
exactly,
to schools that don't want to teach standard science,
exactly,
or regular curriculums because of religious exemptions.
Right, exactly. Right, so she is all for doing that as a publicly funded school. So watch this rhetoric as we kind of get closer to the elections. Right, it's going to be like publicly funded charter schools. You're going to hear that, right? We do not want government-run schools, right? It's the same play that they're doing when it comes to medical insurance, right? It's the idea we don't want the government running our stuff, right? The government can't do it. Right, but we're more than happy to take your money and have it kind of go into private hands or kind of like fund our grift. Right, so it's you're absolutely right, Sean. I think to put your finger right on this to say that this is an extraordinarily dangerous move, and that if we don't have a kind of a strong, committed, like progressive left rhetoric and program in order to combat that's a huge liability.
Yeah. So. Destruction of public education is right there on top of Trump's 2020 wish list.
Yep.
He put it out there. So circling back to the budget, which happened earlier that day, Governor Wolf took time to call these charter schools and these online schools a scam. And he called them a scam. And yes, these schools are absolutely scams.
Yep.
Like... Ain't no other easy way to explain.
No. It's online,
online, like
looks like a duck, walks like a duck, quacks like a duck.
It's not a duck. No, but these schools, like online education, like these online charter schools, cyber charters. They are graduate. They have kids that are like 3 or 4 years behind. And like their excuse is like when they try to get them, well, it takes us this long to catch them up to speed. But like when these students get bumped out of the online charter schools and go back into a traditional public school, it's a fucking mess to get these kids up to like speed.
Yep.
I mean, these things are a fucking joke, and they're a scam, and these are just people profiting off of kids going to school, like and enriching themselves.
Yep.
Yeah, there are good charter schools out there, I'm sure. There are successful charter schools that are out there, but those are not those are the exception. Like they're not the norm.
Yep. That's exactly it.
So, I mean, and most of these schools are, corrupt. You have management companies that are profiting off of it. You have people making like 10, 11, $12 million a year off of these charter schools and their companies and like all the land that they own. I mean, you have people finding ways to make millions of dollars off this grift, and it's a lot easier than getting a casino in Pennsylvania.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. There's a lot less risk involved since they're just handing you money.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's more profitable to get a charter school than it is to get a casino in Pennsylvania, and the casino industry, not the most visionary industry out there.
Well, I think I was just thinking, maybe since now like Penn Gaming just bought Barstool Sports, maybe we'll actually get some the Barstool charter schools now that Pennsylvania will support. Maybe we could just put it all together. Right? Why make a distinction between the casinos and the charter schools, Sean? let's just put them all together.
Yeah. So there's also other really good things, and I think this was probably one of the best budgets Wolf has put forward in the past 5 years. Mm-hmm. He's, making Republicans make some tough choices. Do they want to fund public higher education, or do they want $200 million going to horse racing every year? Mm-hmm. That right there is the biggest kicker, because that right there has a lot of people pissed off.
Well, a lot of Republicans, I would imagine, because it's like they're completely penned in. And like your area, where you're at in Bucks County, yep,
it's like horse racing central, like where all the stables and farms are at. Like those are the people that are benefiting. The Republicans who have like that old generational wealth in the rich parts of Bucks and Montgomery County.
Yep.
who don't need this fucking money
They
as
do
it
not.
is.
Believe me, you go for a little bit of a drive, like not too far from where I'm at. Like, give me 5 minutes out in the hills, and then I'm like, nope, they don't need this money. That's true.
So, yeah.
No, I mean,
so
and
I
look,
thought
and I mean, this is the kind of thing that Republicans have pulled this kind of stuff like so many times before, and it's good to see this happening. I mean, you're talking about again $204 million proposed for scholarships for loan.
Make them play the false choice game.
That's right.
For once.
That's right. Basically say, look, we're not raising taxes, right? We're just going to be taking money from one pot and move it over to another pot, right? We're just gonna
you don't want us to take away from your friend's pot. You want to take away
really?
from the poor's.
Oh, yeah. Your friends must be doing some really socially useful stuff for them. What do they do? Oh, horse racing. Oh. So
an industry that no one gives a fuck about.
Right, exactly. So you people over here, you need to go to school, and you want to give money to your horse racing friends. Is that? Am I getting that right? And then the Republicans are going, don't. Start freaking out.
Yeah.
But I mean, look, it's $204 million scholarship low and moderate income students for PASHE schools, and another $12.9 million to centralize some aspects of running the state system schools. You heard me talk a little about some of the legislation being proposed last week. I'm not going to get into that again now. And then you talk about another $400 million in new state aid to public schools. And although, and this is the other nice little kind of shift, is that $400 million in new state aid to public schools, right, is also dependent in part upon this $280 million that would depend on this kind of reform of charter schools. So it looks like he's going right at those charter schools now, which is that's going to also be an interesting discussion. So,
yeah.
Sean's off reading Twitter. I'm sorry.
No, my Slack channel is active. So sorry.
It's active.
Slack channel with work, but yeah, I mean, like, there's also other things that are in there that was really good. So like, I spent the budget day doing some fun things.
Do tell.
Which was awesome. So I got an email the night before, like literally like 5 o'clock the night before, asking if I can shoot photos all day. Mm-hmm. For healthcare workers and SEIU, the healthcare union. So was able to follow around a bunch of home healthcare workers throughout the day, follow them with their lobby visits, take photos of them meeting, training, them sitting in the rotunda, watching the budget, and then dropping postcards off in the governor's reception room, right? And so they did some chanting and, some fun union chants. And within for 5 minutes, nothing too long, and literally right after the governor's aide starts talking, mm-hmm. Wolf pops in, and the room just erupts.
Nice.
I mean, it was awesome. I mean, yeah, we give the governor a lot of shit. I think as we should, but it's fun seeing him being accessible to that, especially to people. I mean, these are all. Mostly women, 80% women that came, mostly African-American women. I know, these are people who are voting for Wolf and support the governor and what he's doing. And, this is the reason why, the governor's reason why they're able to have a union right now, because of the rules that he changed.
Yep.
And so these people have a lot that are really supportive of Governor Wolf. Saw a couple of people almost crying meeting him, but it's that type of stuff is fun. So it was great being the only person. There's only two of us with the camera in the room, so we was able to get pictures of that. And
awesome.
Yeah, spent the week. Now I'm spending the rest of my week editing photos.
Nice.
Yeah, I got about 50 to 60 keepers that I'm going through, and then we'll be editing more after that.
There you go. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let me just touch on a couple more things just from the budget that I just want to kind of make so people know what's at stake here too, as well. Is that there's, if you recall, this was the last budget round too, as well. What's back also on the table is raising the minimum salary for public school teachers to $45,000 from its current $18,500. That would be a huge kind of boost to teachers. You're also talking about $30 million in this plan for $25 million for pre-K counts and $5 million for the Head Start supplemental program. That is amazing. You're also talking about raising the minimum wage. You got the minimum wage bill on there, go up to $12 an hour. We've already talked about how that $12 is certainly not enough. But there's kind of built into that. He wants to have that eventually go to 15, but that's also a good move. Right?
And there's also $1.1 billion into remediating public schools, cleaning up the public schools. We talked about this last week.
Yep.
Talk about this again. There is pretty much like an environmental disaster happening within the public schools in Philadelphia. You know, with the asbestos and lead, and also other schools around the state, especially in the cities that buildings are 100 years old, 50, 60, 70 years old. So they're like, that's also something that's really good, and it'll be interesting to see if the Republicans stonewall that from going through.
Yeah,
because that'll show you where their priorities are.
Absolutely, man. A ton on the table. Oh man. So anything else going around on the state today, Sean? This week?
Nothing too much.
Nothing too much. I got some things I could talk about, but I'm not going to because I'm still too flustered and frustrated with myself for screwing up the recording there. So I'm just going to let it be. That'll be much to your liking, Sean. Well, cool. Well, listen, we'll take a quick break, and we're going to come back with this week's last call, where we talk about beer, we talk about just random stuff, and space news, of course. There's actually a couple little space news things that I would like to talk about. So this is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken Press. Back right after this. This is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken Press. For the past 7 years, Raging Chicken Press has brought pull-no-punches, progressive reporting and commentary to the interwebs. Our long-form investigative pieces, stories that no access journalist wants to touch, or rollicking weekly podcasts strive to advance progressive movements and perspectives rooted in the struggles happening across the country or down the street. We've broken national stories and caused our share of discomfort in the halls of power. If we want a progressive future, we need progressive media. And you can help support Pull No Punches, homegrown progressive media today. Become a member of Raging Chicken Press for as little as $5 a month. Simply go to patreon.com/rcpress and choose your membership level. We need to make sure to keep the movement in the media and the media in the movement. Best way you can do that is to become a member of Raging Chicken today by going to patreon.com/rcpress. Thank you for your energy, your encouragement, and your support. Keep up the fight. Welcome back to Raging Chicken's Out the Coop podcast. It's today's last call, where we talk about space news, beer news, and whatever else we feel like we're talking about, feel like dealing with. So, kind of do a quick rundown of the space news. There was a lot this week, actually, more than I'm going to actually talk about here today. The big news I thought was pretty awesome. NASA astronaut Christina Koch returned to Earth yesterday. She set a new record for the longest single spaceflight by a woman. That was 328 days on the International Space Station. And she did, if you go in the link in the show notes, it'll go through a whole series of pictures of her up there. She was just just doing tons of scientific research up there. Everything from, as I mentioned in the intro, about the effects of microgravity on plant biology, seeing how study behaves in kind of zero gravity, right? And which is obviously incredibly important to figure out. The impact of microgravity and things like diet, water conservation, and recycling on kidney health, a bunch of stuff like that. And so kind of check it out. It's kind of cool stuff. There was some great video of her getting out after she the kind of landed the capsule, getting out of the capsule. Of course, when you've been in space for that long, despite, even when you're doing lots and lots of exercise, that you feel the impact of coming back to kind of Earth's gravity. So welcome back to Earth, Christina Koch. And she was up there too as well. Her best friend was also on the space station with her, and she'll be coming back soon too as well. So SpaceX is, they're making a big play right now. I'm not quite sure about what the push is right now. I have some suspicions on this, but I'll come back to another time. But is that Elon Musk has been all over Twitter the past few days about some hiring, right? And it started out with kind of hiring for Tesla. And he's basically tweeting out, "We're hiring all these different people. Come up. You don't even need a high school diploma, right? Just hit me up. Tell me what you do, and we want to bring on good people all over the place." And so that kind of got this buzz going. And then now there's been real questions about whether or not they're going to get their Starship kind of off the ground. Remember, Starship is the SpaceX's kind of like enormous rocket. Kind of reusable rocket that can eventually make the journey to Mars, right? So they are keen to get this up and running, especially for the first step, which is going to be building that lunar gateway and also establishing some of the initial runs to the moon. And they are upping their timeline basically to try to get some of the first full test launches out by September, which will be that would be wild. So they want to go to 4 production shifts and run 24/7. There's also some interesting plays too, as well, as that as a way to kind of increase impact of the Cybertruck. They're actually looking to open this huge battery factory in Texas, right, where they find that there's a lot of resistance to kind of electric vehicles and all that kind of stuff, and they figure, well, the way that you deal with that is that you actually put the production facilities down in Texas. So we'll see what happens with that. So yes, the Space's favorite billionaire is definitely making some waves this week. Also, I just thought this was kind of funny. Is that Space Force is all over the State of the Union. There was a kid there. It was like getting ready to graduate, and Trump was like, "Yeah, his hope is to one day join the Space Force," right? Which was just, I mean, whatever. But they're actually digging in. They're actually trying to figure out what to call them. And I thought it was hilarious. They're like, no, we're definitely ruling out space cadets, right? Because you're like, oh, there's a space cadet, right? Looking to, how do you name the Space Force troops? What are they going to be called? We shall see. I would say that they're actually crowdsourcing some names to try to see what they could come up with. My suggestion is that they just watch a whole bunch of sci-fi movies and they'll be all set. It'll be all good. Just call them the grunts, right? Then you're actually right in there. Got a couple of free will releases this week. First, literally like the best freaking label and name. It's a debut of their brand new collab with the folks at Lost Tavern Brewing. It is called Snowmower, and it's got the picture of this guy on kind of like a rider mower, like like a lawnmower rider mower, but in snow, like all decked out in his winter stuff. And it's a great label. Lost Tavern, by the way, is based in Hellertown, PA. I've been itching to get there for a long time, but I'm glad to see that the collab's there. Snowmower is basically a cream ale with vanilla bean, and it comes at about 5.2 ABV. Nice kind of easygoing, mild malt base with the addition of flake corn, and it's looks awesome. So I'm going to check that one out. Also, this week's the debut of Eon Blue. That is a brand new barley wine. It is an English style barley wine brewed with a base of Halcyon. How do you say that? Halcyon? I don't know, Sean. You know. Pale malt, which we patiently boiled for. Boiled for 5 hours. And in this tradition, the interpretation of classic English style lets the malt character kind of really come forward. There's less of the bitter hop character that you get in a lot of the American versions of this. It's got notes of vanilla, graham cracker, and nutty toffee, and that comes in at a kind of pack your punch 9% ABV. So it's a cool thing. I got some of their the COB releases from last week, and they were fantastic. The white chocolate one especially was great. But yeah, so hey, what do you got going on, Sean? Fun stuff?
Breaking news.
Joe
Sestak has endorsed Amy Klobuchar for president.
Yeah, there you go. Go, Joe.
That's as dramatic as it gets.
Is that like
is your response?
Yeah, is that like a... I mean, if I was Amy Klobuchar, like, do you accept that endorsement? It's a kiss of death.
I don't know. I think she needs all the endorsements she can get.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I'm really waiting to see if that's going to be the default consensus candidate. They're going to try to get behind Amy Klobuchar.
Oh, I was talking to someone at like one of the parties up here who has friends on the Klobuchar campaign.
Yeah.
Like Klobuchar is staying in it through the convention in case there's a second ballot.
Oh yeah.
That's the reason why that's the reason why she's staying in. Like, which I mean, if it gets
well, I think at this point, I do believe that at this point that she thinks she can still make a run at it, and I think that I don't know. I think that if she had come out ahead of Biden in Iowa, I think that that narrative would have a little bit more traction. But now maybe not so much. But
yeah, so
we'll see.
Maybe I think like that might have happened last week if she would have endorsed. If if Sestak endorsed earlier. I don't know.
That might have just been the little bump that she needed. Like,
yeah,
I mean, he could have put on his walking shoes and walked all over Iowa, and then campaigning for her, just like he did with his own campaign.
Yeah,
that worked out really well. I mean, not to hate on Sestak too much, but whatever.
Yeah. So
anything cool happening for the weekend?
Nothing too much. So I went back to Pizza Boy, buy a 4-pack of the chocolate covered pretzel stout.
Yeah.
Sunny side up.
Is it gone?
It's still there. Well, like I put 2 cans aside for my mom, and I drank one of them. So now I'll be going back to Pizza Boy again.
Hey, they've got a new release that's out too as well. Did you see this?
What's that?
Oh God, I came across it. I meant to make a note of it so I can ask you about it. But
I know they're putting a peanut butter sunny side up out pretty soon. The variant, which is going to be nice.
I don't think that's the one that I'm thinking of. Let me see if I could find it real quick.
They did a black tea and Earl Grey Marin that will be coming out soon.
No, I'm not going to be able to find it right away. But it's I'll look for it and see what at some point maybe we can talk about it next week because I'm curious. But look, so for the new releases, it just looked interesting, and I wish I could remember what it was. Oh well. But man, your mom's getting the short end of the stick. I got to say though.
No, not really. I mean, she'll be up here in March, so
yeah.
I got some time.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Good. Anything else fun planned for the weekend, or just work all the time?
More work, actually. More editing photos.
There you go.
I feel like I've done more work in January than I did all of last year.
You make me sick, I gotta say. I just gonna say that. You freaking disgust me, but whatever.
No, I mean I went to the PA Dems dinner over the weekend, which was nice.
Oh yeah, how'd your suit go off? I can't believe it didn't lead with that. I mean, come on. Were people like jaw dropping, like spilling their drinks because they couldn't watch?
Yes, it was absolutely hilarious. People were like, I was getting shit all week, especially like in the Capitol. Sloshberg came out, or no, Fetterman pulled me aside. He's like, Sean, what the fuck is this? Literally, like, that's what he says. Are you actually wearing a suit? What the fuck? Come on, man. But, oh no, it was funny. Because I ran into, like, staffers who I haven't seen, like, who know me, and they were stunned. So that was pretty funny. But, like, they also knew me when I was out here, when I interned, and I had to wear a suit, so... Yeah.
So did you have like a soundtrack playing as you came in? It's like, you can tell by the way he loses one.
No, I did not.
Time is off.
So like earlier that night, like when I tweeted about like going to the fundraisers and all, Rosso tweeted at me, yeah, it's only acceptable if you're wearing jeans and a hoodie. And I knew he was going to, I was like, fuck, he's going to show up. So he showed up. And came over and I was like, you motherfucker. Yeah. So we were having fun. And then like Sloshberg comes up to me in the Capitol when I'm on budget days. He's like, or no, Wednesday. He's like, now that's how I used to see you dressed up. Hoodie and jeans.
Like, things are back to normal now.
Yeah.
Oh man!
So it was fun.
That's cool, man. All right. Well, while you get to go out and have your day, I get to go back and record the first segment of today's show. That's because I screwed it up so much. So whatever. I can't believe it. This week, I'll just say this. That I was what pissed me off even more about it today, is that last night I preloaded a bunch of stuff, got it all kind of ready, had the sound ready before we even got on. I was so excited, and then here we go. I just can't win. Oh, well. All right. Well, man, have a great weekend. And we've got next week, we've got the New Hampshire primary, which is on Tuesday. Tonight we got the debate. There's going to be lots of stuff going on. I'm going to have a couple cool, I think next week I'll be able to make a couple cool I'll let you, not cool announcements per se, but as much as let you all in on some of the other stuff they're kind of working on, kind of non-Raging Chicken related, but also kind of cool politically. But we'll get to that next week if we get the go ahead that we can talk about it. So anyways, this is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken Press. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you again next week. Valentine's Day. Oh, how about that? Valentine's Day with the chicken. See ya!
I feel like there's so many ways in which this country denies its history, right? It denies the history of genocide against indigenous people. Doesn't want to talk about slavery. It's constantly about the reboot. Let's start over. It's the fresh start country. But one of the things I think we talk about least is the war on the left in this country, and the fact that there's been a very, very dirty war waged on socialists in this country, black socialists, democratic socialists, the trade unionists. It's been bloody. It's been bloodiest for black workers, but it's been bloody for white workers too. And the suppression of that history worked for a really long time. But that's what I feel is lifting. Maybe I'm projecting, but I feel like I feel like something is happening where the deep roots of revolutionary movements in this country are reawakening.